Well, this week, PBS premiered the sweeping documentary, Makers, Women Who Make America. It's a film showcasing some of this nation's most influential women, including Bay Area resident Aileen Hernandez, who has dedicated herself to fighting for civil rights.
You do your best to get something done. And if it's not moving, you don't stay there and keep waiting for it to move. You go out somewhere and start pushing them to move.
Among the many roles in her storied career, she also served as president of the National Organization for Women. I had the privilege of sitting down with her today. Ms. Hernandez, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
You know, you've lived quite a life. You've been a warrior against discrimination and inequality for so many decades. Where does that drive come from?
It actually comes from my getting angry. And goes back to when I first went to Howard University, which is where I went to school, and learned that the Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States, was totally segregated.
And what really hit that home for you?
It was getting off the train as we got ready. My father took me, so we were getting off the train, and he was asking about how we got up to Howard University, and they told him that he had to go look for the black taxi cab. Mm-hmm. So being New Yorkers at that time, we just thought the cab was the color of black. It turned out, no, that was not the issue, that if you wanted to go up to Howard University, no taxi driver who was white was going to take you.
Well, your mother also was a firecracker. You told me an interesting story about how when you lived in New York, your neighbors actually petitioned to get your family out of the neighborhood.
Yes.
How did your mother respond?
This is not going to sound like very ladylike. And what my mother did was she took me by the hand. She took me down to the person who had come up with this idea of having a petition. And she walked right in and into the kitchen. And she said to him, what made you decide that you should have us not living in this neighborhood? Who are you to make that decision? So part of it, I learned very quickly that if you've got an issue, you better start speaking up very early on it. What was nice about the end of it was the principal at the school called all of the people together and told them that if they tried to get us out of the neighborhood, he would make sure that we could go into his house and we could still stay there.
How did you become involved with the International Ladies Garment Workers Union? Because that's really how you first became well known.
Well, actually, I became involved with the International Ladies Garment Workers Union because I was sitting in the library at NYU, the New York University, doing a paper, and I got bored. So I said, I need a little time off. And I went down and I saw there was a magazine on the table, and the magazine said, aha, you coming down and read me. And I went down and read them, and they had a little ad in there. And the ad was, are you an oddball? Would you like a job that doesn't pay much money, but will give you great human involvement? I said, they're talking to me. So I read that. I left New York University, and I went down because it said at the end of it, just fill out this and let us know. And I went down, and they were setting up a whole year of training for anybody who wanted to work for the union. So that's how I got in, and then once I got out, because it was a whole year, of course, at the end of it, you got a job, and you could go any place that the ILG was. And I, of course, being in New York, went to California because it was a long distance away, and I wanted to see California.
And it was with the union that you became friends with Eleanor Roosevelt.
Oh, yes. She was very much involved, incidentally, in organizations and the unions particularly. And I kept meeting her over my years. I spent a lot of time with her on the committees that were coming up about women. She headed one of the committees that John F. Kennedy held, not for the union, but for the women's movement.
And what was she like?
Marvelous. She was fantastic. I was in love with her and her husband already because I used to wave at them when I was in elementary school. He was the governor before he was the president.
The governor of New York.
Governor of New York, and so we would be allowed out of class to go down and wave at them when they were in New York City.
That's a great story. In 1964, President Lyndon Johnson appointed you to the newly established Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. There were 5 commissioners.
Right.
You were the only woman. What was that experience like?
Very interesting, to say the least. That was not unusual. There were not too many women in any place in Washington in those days, or in most of the other organizations either. But I was doing this in San Francisco, essentially, but without anything related to women. We didn't have a law in San Francisco that gave us the right to look at issues about women. But I have been doing much of it, and I was really surprised that so many people were so much unaware of what was going on in terms of women's opportunities to keep going up the ladder like the men were given the opportunity to do.
After the EEOC, you moved on to the National Organization for Women, NOW. How did that come about? Because you served as president.
Well, I was going to say it didn't exist. So what happened was we helped put it into place. And again, I found Mrs. Roosevelt there because it was her committee that all of us were from all over the United States. All of us were coming in for a committee that John F. Kennedy had put together on women. And it was there I had an opportunity to speak about what was not happening with the new law that had just been passed. And as a result of that, everybody got angry and decided we needed to have something that would change that.
And just real quickly, are you happy with the progress we've made, or much more needs to be done?
Well, I certainly am I'm happy with the progress, but I don't think by any means that we are finished. There's a lot more that we have to do on all of those levels, and I think it would be very nice if we just went ahead and did that. That's what the laws are supposed to be. We're supposed to be the country that's in front of everybody on making those changes. And I think we have taken too long to get there.
But certainly you were in the thick of it and had a big hand in making sure those changes happen. Aileen Hernandez, it's been a privilege and a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here.
One more note, on March 11th, Aileen Hernandez will be a guest on KQED Public Radio's Forum program on 88.5 FM.